I'll talk to you about a completely different subject, about the Indian city. You know, when you enter into an Indian city, what do you see? You go into the main public space of the city, which is the center of the city, and what you see is actually a sea of people moving. People are going about their own chores. Shops are opening. They're doing their pujas to open their shops to do good business. You have children going to school, negotiating their own space, sometimes accompanied by elders, sometimes unaccompanied. The unaccompanied children actually convey a sense of security that exists in the community. So there are lots of things happening when vendors are shouting. All your five senses are assaulted. You see a cacophony of visual images with dominated by all kinds of hoardings proclaiming shop fronts, proclaiming materials which are in the market, and often the largest ones are from the field of films and sometimes even from the field of politics. So you have this huge set of images which actually are visually assaulting your senses because you cannot figure out what's happening in this, what appears to be a chaotic kind of condition. You also have houses which open into the main street, and therefore there are small columns or sacred diagrams being made in front of the doors, and people step aside from those diagrams in reverence, and they walk through. Everyone negotiates their way, almost like neural networks. It does not accept any obstacle. It keeps moving. Everything is negotiating and moving all the time. Now, in that kind of condition, you're also having things happening from the upper floor. People are trying to talk to the people on the ground floor. Sometimes people are lowering baskets so that vegetable vendor can place the vegetables inside and they can send the money down. There are all sorts of things happening in the same field. And at the same time, there are also temples. There is a banyan tree on the side in which, or any kind of tree, under which they place flowers. After a few days, you find a lamp there. And after some time, you see a little shelter to protect the lamp. And before you realize it, you have a roadside temple on the side. So you have this kind of things happening all the time. And while the person is walking past, they say either namaste or whatever type of gestures they need to do towards a sacred object. They do that and then it moves along. Same time, you can hear the sound of an azan happening on the side. You can hear the church bells ringing. You can hear school bells ringing. You have the entire drama of life being played on the street. Everyone is talking to each other. People are greeting each other. There is a sense of familiarity in the street of people who see each other every day. You have lots of families sleeping on the road. You have tramps and drunkards who are sitting around in a stupor, and people walk past without noticing any of these things. Now, this is what hits us when we, as trained designers, go into a new street, an existing Indian street, is that we say, oh, what a chaos. So our reaction is that since we are not able to read what we are seeing, in other words, what we are seeing is not legible to us, what we do is we just declare them as chaotic. Now, when we say these are chaotic, we also have in our minds the image of the North European street, which is so orderly in its design. There are designated spaces for vehicles to move, designated spaces for pedestrians. There is designated spaces on the road for all the urban furniture, like post boxes and telephones and what have you, or just places to sit. You also have shop fronts which are orderly placed on either side. You have controlled graphics on the buildings. you have everything that appears to be controlled and functioning very well. Yeah. So that's the image we have in our mind of what is a good street. And when we see the chaotic Indian street, what runs through in our head is that we need to actually redesign our streets to kind of in remembrance of the orderly streets that we found in Northern Europe or in the United States. So this is the kind of response that we have when we see what is an illegible visual environment where you cannot make out what's going on. So then we look back upon the known images, and we are trying to find an order in what we see. Yeah? So this order is an OCD of our system. Yeah? We are obsessive about finding order. All civilizations across the world are looking for order. They are looking for somebody who will sit up there in the sky and control. He knows everything about everything, hears everything that you do and you say, and is trying to control your life, punish you if you behave badly, reward you if you behave well. So we are looking for an external agency to be prevailing upon the chaotic environment that we see, to ensure that there is a certain level of order that is brought into life. In other words, we are obsessed with the idea of order. All of us have been told that if something that is orderly works better, something that works in time is better, because time is then, there's even a saying that time is money. Yeah. So it becomes, our idea of order itself becomes an idea, a transactional idea, where we think of it as something that will bring us better profit, bigger profit. So this is what is ingrained into our minds through our education system. Our education system tells us that if you can break things into its components and put them in their right place in a functioning order, the whole apparatus will work better, and therefore that's better than things doing their own things. Yeah. So this is part of that obsessive order seeking that we do. Now, this is also a result of the kind of indoctrination that we have had, that industrial logic actually gives you the best answer for most situations. But does the industrial logic appeal or happen in the Indian city? Of course, it does not happen. Yeah? Because the street that you find or in the middle of the city is actually not just a place for vehicles to move along. Like all linear spaces are designed for movement, but at the same time, the Indian street, the great Indian street that you find in the middle of our cities, are streets which are multifunctional spaces. While the vehicles are moving, while people are moving, while all sorts of networking is happening on the road, people are living, people are dying on the road, people are drinking, sleeping, people are carrying out their entire gamut of life on the road. And the whole thing functions because there is a sense of familiarity of air. And we assume that this is utter chaos and that it's not functional. But it's been functioning for hundreds of years in this country, because what actually happens is that each participant on the street is actually working out their own schema. And in that schema, you have, they map their own trajectories. Okay? So whether it's a child or a street dog or a cow, they have their own trajectories of movement. Even birds, for instance, have specific places where they come and sit every day. Yeah? All animals, all human beings are actually functioning on a schema that they work on. And multiple schemas are simultaneously playing at this street, on the street. But we have been told that unless everything is brought down to its functional best, they're not good. That it's a chaotic place, it's not in order. So what is it that we are looking for actually is to put everything into a more profitable kind of position, into a transactional mode, where the street becomes the new place where everything works smoothly and all the components are identified separately, their speeds, their functions, their relationships are all predetermined, and then they will have to move in a particular way to create an orderly system. And the ultimate function of the human being is to become a good citizen and to come into the public space and enjoy themselves in a manner which is already anticipated out of them. So is this what makes a good city in India? Certainly it's not what is making a good city in India. And this, the industrial logic that's been drilled into our technical education particularly has driven us to a point to believe that unless things are broken down to components and their relationships are established, the meaning of every component is lost and the meaning of every relationship is lost. But that's not how cities work. Cities work as the great Indian street works, as the ultimate cultural expression of a very pluralistic society where different kinds of people, different age groups of people, different genders of people, different economic groups are functioning simultaneously as a group using the same space in differing times in different ways. So what you have actually is a very well integrated cultural product which has a bazaar and it has the traffic moving in it, it has people vending, it has sometimes it is doubly loaded corridor on both sides, you have vendors, you hear the sound of vendors all the time. The whole, you go and feel and touch and feel the goods that you want to buy. You take the rice in your hand and then you decide that to buy it or not to buy it. Yeah? You allow it to pass through your hands. So there is a tactile quality in that relationship. And all these are networked into the street. Whereas it's not like you walk into a supermarket and you buy things which are all packed and labeled in plastic packets, and therefore the label, you trust the label and you buy what you see in front. But here there is a tactile event that takes place between the buyer and the seller, and there's a level of human interaction and understanding which makes that location far more humane than just a buying and selling place. Now, when you look at, for instance, street performers are performing, they're making their living on the street. Yeah, many different kinds of things are happening. You have, sorry, I'm going back to the, you have roadside shrines which are just built up on the roadside. Different kinds of imagery are placed. You have sacred patterns which are drawn on the road, and you have the presence of the divinity on the road. Yeah? Whether you believe in the divinity or you don't believe in the divinity, that's a different question. But what you have is a place where those who believe can pause and say their prayers or just think of the divinity that there is. These are streets in Kathmandu where you can see that there's a whole side, two sides, the walls of the road, walls on the side of the road are also busy places where hundreds of things are happening. And there are many congregations, there are many levels in which street is viewed, and there's multiple experiences which are parallelly happening. But our minds have begun to construct binaries between the order and the chaos idea. Yeah? We think that if there is no order, it's chaotic. But is that really so? Are they really these kind of black and white binaries? That's a question that I think we need to primarily ask. We have this idea of these large streets which are being completely pedestrianized in India now. This is the Chandni Chowk in Delhi, which has been pedestrianized recently. And you can see how people actually have taken it over. they have not following the rules that is laid down for the pedestrians and the vehicles and the vendors and the people who are just sitting around. It's now becoming its own indigenous self. Yeah, it is not behaving like a pedestrianized street that you will find in, say, in Berlin. It's behaving like itself. Yeah. So there is that multiple converging schema that is on the street, which actually gives you the impression that it's not orderly, but in fact, it is working in a very high level of order. Each schema has its own order. So the multiple orders which are functioning simultaneously to create an experience like you see in a film. That is, you have still images which are placed so fast and so quickly together that your perception tells you that it's moving. That is the kind of experience that we have on the Indian street. Now here, I would also like to argue that one of the most important components of the street is that the people who are using the functions, who are generating their own schemas, actually are creating their own multiple orders within the schema. And then their subjectivities are an important key to the way the schema is played out and opened out. Yeah? That is, if you want to analyze it objectively and with an industrial logic, you will find that the place is dysfunctional. But if you put your subjectivity, you invest your emotions into that space, you see a completely different picture. You see a picture of a functioning schema, very well ordered functioning schema, which works not only with your physical needs and physical spaces, but also works with the idea of your emotional investment. Yeah? So people have a subjective way of connecting with the reality, and that connection makes the order an experiential entity for the person who is using it. Yeah? For those who are not able to do this, like for us, university trained people, we go to a street and we want to clean up the street. We want to make sure that everything is working in order. Yeah? But in fact, a very high degree of order is functioning right there, because the subjectivities of people are enabling places, events to happen in a manner in which is ordered for their own subjectivities. So the distinction is that the difference between the public and the private space is blurred, and the great Indian street becomes an open book for multiple players, multiple needs and requirements and functions to work together at the same time. Thank you.